What happens when the man who signs the checks hears his own front desk laugh at an old couple? Matthew Darden leaned back in his leather chair, staring at the spreadsheet that had just lit a fuse in his gut. Out of 17 boutique hotels he owned across 3 states. Location number 11. Lakeside View Inn had the worst customer satisfaction scores for the last 4 months. Almost every review said the same thing. Rude front desk staff, long waits, and a cold atmosphere that didn't match the warmth the brand was known for. He bought the company 6 years ago from a retiring family, cleaned it up, modernized the systems, and expanded slowly, but he'd always kept the original promise: make guests feel like they were home. Lately, he'd gotten too comfortable behind spreadsheets and quarterly meetings. He hadn't stepped foot in Lakeside View in over 3 years. He rubbed his jaw, staring out the window. "I'm tired of hearing excuses," he muttered. The hotel was in a small lakeside town in Pennsylvania. Corporate staff rarely visited it, and the local manager sent glowing reports too glowing. He didn't want to send anyone else this time. He needed to see it himself. 2 days later, Matthew stepped off a bus in the town square wearing a faded windbreaker. Jeans and a baseball cap pulled low. He'd dyed his hair a shade darker and shaved the beard he was known for. The glasses helped too. No one at this location had ever met him in person. Most of the staff were new hires, and the manager, a woman named Cassidy, had joined only a year ago. He rolled a small suitcase behind him as he walked through the sliding doors of the hotel. The lobby looked clean, but cold sterile even. A single front desk clerk sat behind the counter, tapping on her phone. She didn't look up. Matthew walked up and waited. Still nothing. He cleared his throat. The woman, mid-20s, finally looked up and gave a practiced, shallow smile. "Checking in?" "Yeah, name's David Warren. I booked online." She typed with one hand, the other still holding her phone. "Room 204, ID and credit card." As he reached into his wallet, the glass doors opened behind him. An elderly couple stepped in slowly. The man had a cane, and the woman clung to his arm. They looked tired. The clerk glanced at them, then looked back at Matthew. "Ugh, here we go." He froze. She leaned slightly toward him and whispered, "They come in every month, always confused, always slow, and they ask the dumbest questions." Matthew didn't respond. His stomach turned. The old man stepped up beside him. "Excuse me, miss, I believe we have a reservation, under Harold and June." The clerk didn't hide her annoyance. "One sec, I'm helping someone." June smiled politely. "Of course, dear, we just—" "Yeah, I heard you," the clerk snapped. "I'm not deaf." Matthew clenched his jaw. He turned to the couple. "You two go ahead. I'm not in a rush." The clerk rolled her eyes. "Fine," she muttered. "Let's just get this over with." She searched the system roughly, sighed dramatically, and said, "You booked a king room, but we only have doubles left. Sorry." Harold blinked. "But we always get the king. We booked it last week." "Well, it's not available." She shrugged. "You want the double or not?" Matthew watched June's face fall. Harold reached into his pocket. "Yes, that's fine. We'll take it." The clerk turned back to Matthew as she printed the paperwork. "You see what I mean?" she whispered. "They're like clockwork. I call them the lost and founds. Lost in their heads, and we always have to find their damn room." Something in Matthew snapped. He took his key card, nodded silently, then followed the couple toward the elevator. When they entered, June offered a soft smile. "Thank you for letting us go ahead, young man." "No need to thank me," he said quietly. "You didn't deserve that." June's eyes watered a little. "We've been coming here since '98. It was always such a lovely place." Harold patted her hand. "Things changed, sweetie?" Matthew's throat tightened. That night, after checking into his room, he called no one. He didn't rant. He didn't make a plan. He just sat on the bed, eyes staring at the ceiling. He'd built this. This was his name on the deed. And a clerk someone he paid had turned his hotel into a place where the elderly were mocked to their faces. He had to stay longer. Watch more. Learn if this was just one person or a bigger problem. He would become a guest for the next 3 days, and by the end of it, everyone would know exactly who he was. The next morning, Matthew dressed in the same windbreaker and jeans and came down early. The lobby was quiet, The lights dimmed to morning mode. A different front desk clerk was on duty, tall, heavy-set, maybe in his early 40s. His name tag read, Wes. He stood with both hands wrapped around a coffee mug, watching the parking lot through the window. Matthew walked up and gave a small nod. "Morning," Wes said, voice low but friendly. "Sleep all right?" "Yeah." "Thanks," Matthew said. "Just grabbing some coffee. You guys serve breakfast?" Wes pointed toward the hallway near the elevator. "Kitchen opens at 7. It's self-serve, but we keep it stocked." "Appreciate it." Wes hesitated, then leaned slightly forward. "You here for the job fair?" Matthew blinked. "What job fair?" Wes chuckled. "Town's hosting one down at the Civic Center. Figured you were one of the folks they bust in." "No, just visiting." Well, let me know if you need anything." Matthew nodded and stepped away, making a mental note. So they were short-staffed enough to assume guests were job hunters. That tracked. He walked past the breakfast area, took a seat near the window, and watched. Over the next hour, 3 different employees came through the lobby. One wore a housekeeping uniform and looked dead on her feet. She limped slightly, her uniform wrinkled, her ponytail uneven. She nodded at Wes, who gave her a quick wave. She disappeared down the hallway without a word to anyone. At 8:30, Cassidy, the general manager, arrived. She was in her 30s with a pressed blazer over jeans and white sneakers. She held her phone in one hand and a to-go coffee in the other. She didn't greet anyone. "Wes," she said as she passed the desk, "I need that maintenance report on my desk by 10, and remind housekeeping that we're short on linens. Again." Wes nodded without looking up from the computer. Matthew followed her with his eyes as she disappeared into the back office. He didn't approach her, not yet. Instead, he waited until 10 o'clock and wandered the halls. He found the housekeeping cart near room 215 and knocked gently on the open door. The woman from earlier was inside, changing the sheets with slow, deliberate movements. Her name tag said Marta. She looked up, startled. "Sorry," Matthew said. "Didn't mean to scare you." She shook her head. "It's okay. Just wasn't expecting anyone." "Do you work alone on this floor?" She nodded. "Usually. Sometimes they send a second person if we're full." "Looks like a lot of rooms." She gave a tired half laugh. 17 today. That's a light day." Matthew frowned. "Doesn't seem light." "It's better than last weekend. I had 26 then. No help." He leaned against the doorframe. "How long you been here?" "Almost 2 years. I'm part-time, technically, but they schedule me full-time hours." "Do you get benefits?" She stopped tucking the corner. "Not officially." He let the silence stretch. "I just need the hours," she said. "My son's in high school. We're trying to save. I can't afford to lose the job." "Do you get breaks?" 15 minutes if I'm lucky. Lunch is whenever I can find time, usually not until 2 or 3. Matthew nodded slowly. "Thanks, Marta. You do great work." She looked surprised. "Thanks. That's not something we hear much." He stepped away and continued down the hall, heart heavy. She wasn't just overworked, she was being taken advantage of. He spent the rest of the day observing. The front desk rotated to a younger man, around noon Kyle, according to his name tag. Kyle was efficient, but cold. He didn't smile once during Matthew's 30-minute wait in the lobby. A couple walked up, asking about late checkout, and he barely looked at them before saying no. "No exceptions," he said. They left disappointed. Matthew approached. "Hey," he said. "Are late checkouts never allowed?" Kyle shrugged. "Only if they're in the system. Otherwise we get docked." "Docked?" "Cassidy runs a tight sheet schedule. If we don't turn the rooms over fast enough, we get flagged. Seems strict." Kyle leaned in slightly. "She wants 5-star numbers with 2-star staff. We can't win." Matthew nodded and stepped back. At 5, he watched Cassidy conduct a team huddle near the supply room. 4 employees stood around her: Marta, Kyle, Wes, and a young woman in maintenance coveralls. Cassidy flipped through a clipboard. "Marta, I need you to cover the 3rd floor tonight. We had a call out." "I already did 17 rooms today," Marta said quietly. Cassidy didn't look up. "And you'll do 7 more. Let me know if it's too much, and I'll find someone else who wants the hours." Matthew watched Marta's shoulders drop. Cassidy turned to the next person. "Kyle, you're staying until midnight. Front desk needs full coverage." Kyle opened his mouth. But she cut him off. Don't start. You said you wanted more hours. Finally, she looked at the woman in maintenance. There's a leak in the boiler room. Figure it out. The meeting ended as quickly as it began. No thank yous. No acknowledgement. Matthew stepped forward. Excuse me, Cassidy. She turned, annoyed. Yes? Do you mind if I ask a question about the town? She forced a smile. I'm kind of in the middle of something. Won't take long. I'm thinking of moving here. Just wondering what the job market looks like. She dropped the smile. It's competitive. We're always looking, but not for people who ask too many questions. Matthew nodded slowly. Got it. She turned and walked away without another word. That night, Matthew sat in his room and wrote down what he'd seen. Every exchange, every face, every injustice. The next morning, he checked out. The same front desk clerk from his first day, her name now visible as Tina, was back on duty. She didn't recognize him. Checking out? Yes. She didn't ask how his stay was, just handed him the receipt. He waited. She looked up. Is there a problem? He pulled his ID from his jacket pocket and laid it on the counter. She looked down, then froze. Her face lost color. I'm Matthew Darden, he said calmly. I own this property. Her mouth opened, closed again. He didn't wait. Get your supervisor. 5 minutes later, Cassidy appeared, her expression puzzled until she saw the ID. Mr. Darden, she said quickly, I had no idea you were visiting. If I'd known, you would have acted differently, he interrupted. Exactly why I came undercover. She blinked. Matthew turned to Tina. You're done. Clean out your drawer. Tina started to protest. You mocked elderly guests in front of me, he said. You disrespected loyal regulars. That's non-negotiable. He turned to Cassidy. You and I are going to my office right now. She hesitated. I don't understand. You don't have to, he said. But if you want to leave this building still employed, you'll follow me. Wes, standing nearby, looked stunned. Marta had just stepped in from the hallway, eyes wide. Matthew turned back to them. There are going to be changes, starting today. He walked through the lobby toward the back office, Cassidy following silently. The staff stood in stunned silence, and for the first time in a long time, the hotel was quiet for the right reasons. Cassidy shut the office door behind her, her posture stiff. Matthew didn't sit. He stood beside the desk, arms folded, eyes on her. She hovered near the filing cabinet, clearly unsure whether to defend herself or wait for permission to speak. I want every employee file on the desk, now. She hesitated, then moved to the cabinet and pulled out a stack. There are over 20 staff members, she said. Do you want all of them? No, only the people currently working, today. She flipped through quickly, separating out folders and placing them in a neat pile. Matthew opened the first one. Marta. He read silently for a moment, then looked up. Why is she classified part-time? She requested flexibility when she started, Cassidy replied. Said she had a son to care for. He flipped the folder closed. She's scheduled 35 hours a week with no benefits. Cassidy gave a tight nod. She's reliable. We try to keep her working. That's not keeping her working. That's exploiting a loophole. She didn't answer. He moved to Kyle's file. He's been here how long? 9 months. Any write-ups? 1, tardiness. He was 10 minutes late after a snowstorm. Matthew closed the folder. You extended his shift without asking yesterday. Why? We're short. We had no one else. No one else? He repeated. Or no one willing to say yes without pushback. She met his gaze. This isn't a charity. People work hard. That's how this industry works. He shook his head. No, that's how bad managers justify mistreatment. Her jaw tightened. Matthew picked up Tina's file last. You promoted her to senior desk staff? Yes, she's efficient, knows the system. She humiliated 2 guests in my presence. And not quietly. How did she pass any kind of customer service check? Cassidy crossed her arms. I wasn't there. I can't monitor every interaction. You're responsible for the tone here. And the tone is toxic. She didn't flinch. He tossed the last folder onto the desk. You walk past your people without acknowledging them. You issue demands like commands. You overwork the few good ones and let the worst ones coast through. They don't complain. They're scared to, he said. I watched Marta fold towels with a limp. You didn't ask why. You told her to do 7 more rooms after 17. Her expression faltered. Matthew took a breath. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to threaten. But I'm not letting this continue. Cassidy looked down. So what happens now? You're being placed on a 30-day review, starting today. Until then, you're off active management. Wes will act as interim supervisor. You'll assist him, quietly. No decisions without his sign-off. Her face flushed. Wes isn't... He doesn't want that responsibility. I already asked, Matthew said. He accepted, and he had ideas. Good ones. Her mouth pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. I'll be back in 2 weeks to review progress. If I find anything close to what I saw this week, your employment ends. She turned to leave. One more thing, he said. You're issuing written apologies to every employee you've overworked or dismissed. And you'll be delivering those in person. Cassidy opened the door and walked out without a word. Matthew followed a minute later and found Wes in the break room, stirring sugar into a chipped mug. You're in charge for now, Matthew said. Nothing formal, but you have my full support. Wes didn't look surprised. She going to be okay with that? She doesn't have a choice. Wes nodded. Then I'll get to work. I want a team meeting in the lobby in 15 minutes. Everyone who's on shift. By the time they gathered, the energy in the room had shifted. Marta stood near the hallway wall, arms crossed but attentive. Kyle leaned against the counter, watching with a guarded expression. The maintenance tech from the day before, whose name tag now read Riley, stood with her hands in her pockets. Matthew stepped forward. I'll keep this short. I'm not here to deliver a speech. I came undercover because what I heard about this hotel didn't line up with what I believed it stood for. I saw disrespect, burnout, and fear. That ends today. No one spoke. You all work hard, too hard in most cases. You deserve to be treated like professionals, not disposable labor. From this moment on, there will be accountability, real accountability. Not just for you, for leadership too. He turned to Marta. You're being moved to full-time, effective immediately, benefits included, if you still want the hours. Her eyes widened. Yes, I do. Thank you. Kyle, Matthew continued, your schedule will be adjusted to something reasonable, and you'll be asked before extra hours are assigned, not told. Kyle gave a short nod. Appreciate it. Riley, you're getting a proper maintenance budget. I want a written report from you by Friday with the top 5 fixes we've ignored for too long. She raised her eyebrows. That's the first time anyone's asked. Then it's long overdue. He scanned the group. We'll be hiring 2 more housekeepers and 1 additional front desk clerk. Until then, we spread the load fairly. No more piling it all on one person. Wes stepped forward. We're also reworking the linen schedule. No more back-to-back flips without breaks. Matthew nodded. And any staff member who mistreats a guest, especially vulnerable ones, will be removed. No warnings, no coaching, just gone. He didn't need to say Tina's name. Starting next week, there'll be anonymous feedback boxes in the break room and laundry area. Anything you write will be read by me directly. The staff stood quietly, processing. I know this doesn't fix what's happened, but I'm not here to pretend it never did. I'm here to make sure it never happens again. He stepped back. Wes will handle day-to-day. I'll check in weekly. And if you ever feel like something's wrong, you have a direct line to my office now. Marta raised her hand slightly. What about Cassidy? She's staying, but under review. She answers to him now, he said, motioning to Wes. She'll be assisting, not directing. No one protested. As the staff dispersed, Matthew moved to the front desk and stood beside Kyle, who was logging into the system. You ever think about training others? Matthew asked. I did, Kyle said. At my last job. Didn't think it'd be possible here. It is now. When we hire the new desk clerk, I want you on the training plan. Kyle looked up. You serious? Completely. That afternoon, Matthew didn't return to corporate. He stayed and helped Wes walk through the maintenance checklist. He shadowed Riley into the boiler room and took photos of the leak. He called the regional HR manager and authorized the 2 new hires immediately. He didn't issue press releases. He didn't film it, he just did the work. Because that's what leadership is when no one's watching. The following week, Matthew returned to Lakeside View Inn without notice, stepping through the front doors just after 7 in the morning. No disguise this time. His presence was deliberate now. The lobby was quiet, and the lights still carried a soft morning hue. Wes stood behind the front desk, typing with focus. He looked up, nodded once, and went back to his task. Matthew took a seat in the corner, observing not in secret, but with purpose. 10 minutes later, Riley walked through the lobby, a toolbox in one hand and a clipboard tucked under her arm. She gave a slight wave without breaking stride. Kyle passed her on his way to the desk, clean polo, pressed slacks, a laminated training binder in his hand. He glanced at Matthew. "She's already in the back," he said. Matthew stood and followed him into the staff area. Cassidy sat at one of the break room tables beside Marta, and a young woman in a new uniform, probably one of the recent hires. Cassidy was listening, not just sitting, but actively listening. Her posture was different, less guarded, more grounded. Matthew stepped in. "Morning." Cassidy stood. "Hi." "I didn't expect—" "I know, that's the point," he said. "Keep going." Cassidy looked to the new hire. "Lena, this is Mr. Darden. He owns the place." Then to Matthew, "We were going over the feedback cards. Marta brought up a good point about how we handle weekend checkouts." Marta spoke up. "We've had guests ask to leave later on Sundays. If we gave a little more flexibility, we could reduce the rush on housekeeping. It's not about working less, it's about working smarter." Matthew nodded. "What's your solution?" Cassidy answered, "We're testing a staggered checkout system. Guests can choose a 10, 11, or noon slot at check-in. That way, we're not flipping 10 rooms at once. It's spreading out the work." He looked at Marta. "You support that?" "I do. We tried it last Sunday. It helped." Matthew turned to Lena. "How's your first week been?" She hesitated. "Honestly, better than I expected. Everyone's been helpful. Kyle walked me through the system. Marta helped me with the carts. It's not easy work, but it feels fair." He nodded. "That's the standard now." Cassidy added, "We're still short one desk person. I've been covering part of the afternoon shift myself." Matthew raised an eyebrow. "How are you managing that?" "I take a rolling stool and work from the side terminal. Kyle's been handling the training load." "Any pushback?" "No," she said. "Not since I stopped giving orders and started asking questions." Matthew gave a slight nod. "Let's walk." They left the break room and made their way down the hallway together. Cassidy kept pace beside him, hands behind her back. "I've been reading every guest survey," she said. "The tone's changing. People are mentioning staff by name, in a good way. Employee turnover? So far, 0 since last week. Riley's even fixing things before guests notice them." She drafted a preventative maintenance checklist. As they passed the laundry room, the industrial dryer rumbled in the background. A cart sat nearby, half loaded with clean linens. Cassidy paused. "We're still stretched thin. The new hires help, but it's not enough yet." "I'm not expecting miracles," Matthew said. "I'm expecting intent, and you've shown that." They walked back into the lobby. Wes was helping an older woman at the desk. His voice was clear and warm, his tone respectful. Matthew waited until she left before speaking. "Wes," he said, "how's it feeling?" Wes leaned on the counter. "Lighter, not easier, but lighter." People know where they stand now, and they know someone's paying attention. Matthew walked behind the desk and scanned the new check-in system. It had been updated color-coded time slots for checkout, a section for guest notes, and a feedback tag that triggered alerts. He turned to Kyle, who was now standing nearby. "This you're doing?" Kyle nodded. "Riley flagged the idea. I built the template." "I want that rolled out chain-wide," Matthew said. "Send the template to corporate." Kyle blinked. "Really?" "Really. Good ideas don't need to come from boardrooms." Cassidy held up a clipboard. "Also, we're piloting a peer recognition system. Staff can nominate each other for above and beyond moments. No cash prizes, just visibility." Wes added, "We post them in the break room every Friday. Builds morale." Matthew took the clipboard, scanned the page. Marta had nominated Lena for helping a lost guest find their missing medication. Riley had nominated Kyle for covering a shift when the system crashed. Kyle had nominated Marta for helping train both new hires. He handed the clipboard back. "You're building culture. That's harder than policies. That's leadership. Cassidy looked down. I didn't understand that before. I thought keeping order meant keeping distance. You learned fast. That matters more than never messing up. Across the lobby, a couple walked in, older, familiar, Harold and June. They looked around, cautious. Cassidy took a quick breath. Let me. She walked across the lobby and met them at the door. Mr. and Mrs. Langley? They paused. I'm Cassidy. I manage the hotel. I owe you both an apology. Harold tilted his head. Oh? We didn't treat you with the respect you deserve. That's not who we want to be. I've made changes, real ones, and I'd like to personally check you in. June smiled gently. We've been coming here a long time. This place used to feel like family. That's what we're working to bring back, Cassidy said. If you'll give us another chance. Harold looked at his wife. She nodded. Cassidy led them to the desk, pulled up their reservation, and said, We have your king room ready, and I added a note anytime you stay. We'll make sure it's here waiting. June's eyes welled up. Thank you, dear. That means more than you know. Cassidy handed them the key card with both hands. Enjoy your stay. When they left for the elevator, Matthew walked over. That's how you earn trust, Cassidy nodded. I'm not done fixing things, but I'm not dodging them anymore. He turned to Wes. You're staying in that role. Officially, you'll receive a title adjustment and compensation to match. Wes chuckled. I didn't ask for that. I know, Matthew said. That's why you're getting it. Kyle stepped over. What about the rest of us? Matthew looked at him. You want in? You said good ideas don't need a title. I believe that. Then send me your training outline. I want it reviewed for national rollout. Kyle blinked. Seriously? You've earned it. Later that afternoon, Matthew sat in the back lot, watching the lake through the trees. The wind carried the scent of pine and wet soil. For the first time in months, the tension in his chest eased. He didn't need to fix every hotel today, but he had fixed this one, not by issuing mandates, but by listening, lifting, and demanding decency. He stood, brushed off his jacket, and walked toward his car. The next location would come soon enough, but he'd leave this one in better hands than he found it. And that was the job.